Do it
Hello and
now.
welcome to Magetalk. I'm Philip,
And I'm Kalen.
and we're live from New York. I'm
And we're
live in
live.
the
Half of
Something Digital
us.
offices for once. Man, it's been a long time since we did an episode with me here, but
Yeah, it
excited to be
has.
excited to
Remember
be
that?
uh, doing this live stream back at our normal time, back to the 5:30s on the Wednesdays. Haven't done
Yep.
this in a long time.
We're taking it back a little bit. We've been doing so many interviews and topical things. So this is just going to be some vintage, old school Mage Talk ranting.
Old
So
school Magetalk ranty goodness.
the last one we did was I was like in an interview mode and it was so weird. It was very bizarre. So
It was bizarre.
I'm never gonna do that ever again. I promise. So I saw in Strava. I
Strava.
saw
They all say
your
Strava.
we so we're both Strava users now. I just got on the Strava bandwagon and you're a hardcore Strava user. And I'm not going to explain any context about what Strava is. The people are just going to have to understand that. But I saw you were like a unicycler passed you up in Central Park or something.
Went
It's
for a
like,
run yesterday in Central Park, um, and as I'm struggling up this one hill, a unicycler on like a fixed gear unicycle. I don't know if there are 10-speed unicycles. I doubt there are, but he's on a fixed gear unicycle, and the guy is like on his phone, like texting while he's riding his unicycle uphill completely effortlessly. And
how
I'm sitting
did you
here.
have time to see how many gears this unicycle had?
Well, it's the first thing you look at. It's the inbuilt reaction. It's like you don't want to check out the girl that just walked by, but you kind of do. And it's the same thing with a fixed
The
gear
only thing
unicycle.
I look at when I see a unicycler is I'm like, they're about to fall. They're about to fall. They're about to fall. It's just like
The wheel
waiting
on
for
this
them.
unicycle was so large. It was like it was at least 4 foot wheel, maybe maybe larger. It was huge.
Nice. Nice.
And the guy had serious skills. He was booking. He was going at least 2 times faster than I
You
was.
you
And
gotta respect unicyclers. Like they just you just look at them. You're looking at their gears. The only thing I'm thinking about is how are they not falling down? And
how could they possibly not be falling down right now?
it's like looking at a Shopify site in real time.
I'll tell
But
you right now, if there ever was a beautiful day in the city to go for a uni, which I think is what they might call like a jaunt out on their bikes,
nah,
they're
nah,
gonna go out, they're gonna go
they
out
don't
for a
call it that.
uni. Yesterday was the day to do it.
They
Um,
don't call it that. Richard asks what if he was juggling too. I'd imagine he wasn't.
he was
That's
he was juggling his cell phone, hooking up all the dates because of the crazy amount of ladies that flock to the unicycle action. Um,
he was
he cleans
just
up on Tinder, the guy. I'm telling you. You,
well, I don't know how to transition out of that one, but
you don't really actually no.
y-
So the thing about Strava is there is a Magento running group on Strava.
mm,
So if you are a runner or a cyclist or you want to get in on the Magento action on the Strava side, that exists. I believe Brent Peterson started that some time ago. But I think if you
nice.
just search for communities, you look for Magento community on Strava. It exists, and there's plenty of people. Actually, Irfan Amani, who's a triathlete, he's on there. Jacob Watson is on there.
Ash,
All the runner
uh,
people.
Ash Smith for out in the UK,
Yeah,
ex
Ashley
Mean
Smith.
Bee.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
I saw him on Strava, and then he's also like a cyclist, or he does everything. And so I looked at his routes. I had a pretty big day yesterday because I went out twice, and then so I thought I was fancy because I racked up like 22 miles in a single day. I look at this
Yeah,
guy's route.
don't ever compare yourself to other people on there. It's
Nah,
crazy.
never. And he did like 40 miles just once. And it was, anyway, it was like two times faster than me. So, but Strava's cool. It's really cool how it tracks all your stuff and things like
I'm
that.
going to the I'm going to the club leaderboard for the Magento leaderboard as of today, Wednesday the 27th. Jacob Watson has 20 miles for the week. Brent Peterson has 15, and I have 13.6, and that's 1, 2, and 3.
Nice.
Um, But yeah, shout out to a bunch of other Magento community folks
That's cool.
who are runners or cyclists in the Magento community on Strava.
Speaking of Magento community folks, I knew I was going to get a transition out of this, and I just did. Speaking of Magento community folks, there's been a lot of discussion of the Magento Association. So we got to talk about that. We got to talk about this. And
Ugh.
I didn't realize that you were one of the community participants. I didn't realize that until
That's what I hear.
I was reading the
Uh,
notes. I was reviewing the what's the name of that company that organizes Stroman and Beck or something like that.
Smith
S-
Buckland,
S-
Smith Buckland,
Smith Buckland put out
Smith
some
Buckland,
great
Smith
recap
Buckland.
notes. Yes, Smith Buckland.
So
Um,
do you want me to give you a quick synopsis
please
of what all this is? So
synopsize away.
The Magento Association was announced a couple months ago by Andrea Ward, Magento CMO, at Imagine. They did a big reveal that Magento would be helping steward the Meet Magento Association's leadership in the world in connecting the community by giving the resources that Magento can provide and sort of backing it. What Magento did is they brought in all the leaders from the existing Meet Magento Association and some key community leaders or people that have, an expressed interest in the community. So people like Josh Warren, Brent Peterson, Karen Baker, myself, Brian Lang from Amazon. That's a whole separate topic. We'll get into that in a minute, I'm sure. So a bunch of people met in Chicago during IRCE in June to have the first of many meetings at the offices of a. I think calling them a law firm is probably the wrong phrase, but it's a consulting firm that helps companies organize and set up nonprofits and set up foundations and associations, trade associations,
This is
and
what
that's
they
all they
do.
do.
Yeah.
This is all they do, and they have their roots in sort of uh, uh, 80 years ago in Chicago, helping the Popcorn Association form, but they've been their roots are in community and software communities specifically. So they've done a lot of work in helping software communities organize, and so Magento wants to do this right from the beginning. They had a representative from the Drupal Association was there to help give some insight into what Drupal went through for a couple years when they first started their foundation.
Right.
And so I felt like it was a lot of the right people, and Magento is footing the bill to do this the right way the first time. So everything from legal filing to actual setting up of an organization, electing a board of directors, putting in bylaws. And these are hard decisions to make, and it uncovers a lot of like tough questions that you sort of start off having to ask.
Yeah.
And yeah, and for sure there will be criticism, but this was not the first meeting. There was a meeting in Leipzig recently, I think this past week, for a bunch of the EU folks. There will be further meetings, both virtual and in person, with many, many people around the community. And it's open topic right now on the Magento community forums at community.magento.com for you to weigh in and ask questions and get Magento's sort of input and your own guidance for whatever area you're most interested in. Right now, a lot of the conversation's been around what Meet Magento does already today, which is, on this sort of the community organization front, specifically around Meet Magento events, but
Yeah.
it's much more than that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's with that as the background. I think you wanted to kind of unpack it a bit.
Yeah, and so that was one of the things I'd noticed was sort of some confusion around what exactly is the point? Are we doing events? Are we doing more than events and that kind of thing? And then some people were Karen posted, Brent posted, different people wrote some posts, some recaps, and uh, I don't know, I don't know why people are complaining. I see people complaining about this, what's going on here? Like they have an agenda and they're just trying to fit us into their agenda. And I'm like, guys, like, what's the deal? I think it's super cool how Magento's sponsoring. I'm sure that this company isn't cheap You know, they seem like they know what they're doing, and
You
they're
think?
paying for that. They're paying for that, and it's kind of neat. Like it feels like they're bringing some cool structure to that.
I
So
would hope that that's how I would hope people would take it like that, but people are going to have their opinions, right? They're going to bring, I don't know. There we go. People have their own sort of baked in preconceived notions. I will say that a lot of the conversation at the Chicago meeting that I was part of was that specifically Magento needs to understand who they're trying to appeal to, and like
yeah,
who is the specific target of the benefits of an association, right?
yeah,
And that is still an open question. Like who specifically does the association benefit?
yeah, yeah. I
And
saw some
that needs to be figured
discussion.
out, right? That's
Yeah. I saw some discussion around that. Like, is it developers? Developers are already sort of well served in the sense of there's a lot of events and a lot of the people that are the most connected in the community are developers or people that are from development agencies or that kind of a thing. So somebody just said no audio. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Well, I can hear
somebody was
myself too.
I think Todd was complaining that the audio um my audio is low. Which you hurried me through fixing my audio, so
That I did. That I most certainly did because you hurried me through being late, sir. Um, sorry, sorry.
Okay,
So
well,
yeah, and
let's go
so I
back
saw
to
there
it.
was
Let's go back to it.
some discussion around like how well are merchants being served, and I noticed like all of the community participants were all developers or people from dev agencies. So like I don't know, what's like how are merchants going to get more involved? Users,
So I put
Magento users, right?
yeah. Uh okay. So there's a couple there's no concrete outcomes yet. Nobody has like published a like this is what we've come out with yet. It's more in note taking form. And I don't know that we reached a consensus in the Chicago meeting that I was part of. I've only been part of one. Brent Peterson was part of more than one meeting so far. I think there were more people that have been involved in more meetings than I have. But let me put it this way: um, merchants have a specific commercial relationship with Magento in that they purchased software from Magento, right?
Right.
Are you there?
I'm right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. So the my sense is that would merchants be part of this association, or do like what like we there is some value in merchants being part of a trade group or an advisory organization to be able to to be able to provide feedback into Magento as an organization. But I feel like Magento already has that with continuing with their customer success. Like they already have a direct line to hearing the voice of merchants at large, and that they have the most direct relationship you can have with them. Whereas
Mm,
Magento doesn't have a direct line of communication to a broader developer and an SI community.
I see.
SIs are a little bit different, but I feel like the developer community could be considered to be underserved in that they don't have a unified voice to speak back into Magento outside of just providing pull requests um,
Hmm.
and forums. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's an
So
interesting
Magento's
perspective.
relationship to them is different than the relationship they have with a merchant who's paying them money and opting into using the platform. And I think having worked at a merchant, uh, we sold vitamins. So at the end of the day, if we weren't selling vitamins, it wasn't important to us. We weren't contributing to open source because we liked contributing to open source because the company that sold vitamins was passionate about open source. We were contributing to open source because Philip said it was a good idea to contribute to open source. And they
Yeah.
said, if you can do that and still sell vitamins, then do that. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that would have been my gut as to why there isn't more merchant community involvement was more so that they just weren't interested. They're worried about selling vitamins, not so much that that need was already being met through other channels. That would have been my gut. Is like they're just not as interested. Like
Well, I
they
don't
don't.
think they are. I don't think they are as interested. And we can sit here and try to put them at the center of everything we do as an association. I'm speaking as if I have some say in this. But if that
Well,
were
you
the
do have some
only,
say in it. You're
well,
on the
so
list.
I'm I'm making a case that there are other people that I think are not that you only focus on one group of people, but you have to start somewhere. So who do you start messaging to? And I think that, yeah, developers and maybe agency owners are people that have the most sway in the adoption of Magento as a platform. Merchants aren't necessarily able to just spin up Magento and get all that done and stand up a site on their own. Developers and system integrators have to advocate for it, and that's my perspective. So it's helpful to have other people with other perspectives in this conversation, because I don't know that I'm right. It's my own myopic view of the it's my worldview as somebody
Hmm.
who works for an SI.
Yeah.
So having more than one voice contributing to the conversation is important.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know though, because like merchants really kind of drive the demand in a way. And um like I think like for example, like we talked about the Adobe community that Adobe has created among, let's say, Photoshop users or something like that.
right.
And that's an example of, and I don't know too much about that, but from what I understand, there's a very um, very big and excited community around Photoshop as far as users. So why shouldn't the same be true of Magento users? And the merchants are the users, the non-technical users are the users, right? There's
They are users. They are
Yeah.
users, but they're not users or consumers of the platform in a way that, in the same way that the people who use Photoshop use the platform. The people who use Photoshop
Like they're
make
power
designs,
users.
right, their power, like, I don't know.
Like
There
they
is
use
no
it
clean
every day.
analogy.
Like if somebody's like a Photoshop power user that is in a Photoshop user group, they probably use Photoshop all day long as like their primary tool for their work. Whereas a merchant on Magento is like it's just one of the tools that plugs into their ERP and everything. It's
Right.
just it's
Yeah,
a
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think it's like some software that has a means to an end, right? Like
yeah.
it's like being passionate about, the banking app on your phone. Like I'm a user of that application, but it doesn't mean that, like, I'm passionate about that
Well,
application.
and that's kind of the thing, is that the people that are passionate about Magento are the developers, and for whatever reason, like the users of Magento. I don't know if that's an oversimplification or if it's just my own myopic perspective, like you're saying, because I haven't really been a user. There probably are. I mean, you look at those merchant testimonials and stuff; they're pretty moving. Like I think there are merchants that are passionate about what Magento's done for their business, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't
Let me
know.
let me let me frame it a different way, okay? We've got 10 years of experience of Magento, and who are most of the people that show up to Magento conferences? Developers, right? Like
Developers. Yeah.
right. And you have to work really hard to get merchants to turn out to events and give them, you have to put Shaquille O'Neal on a stage before they actually turn up and want to hear, you know, what more
Yeah.
Magento has to offer. So my my I don't know why I picked Shaq, because he's never been part of a Magento conference ever, but I was thinking, I'm sorry, that, yeah, it doesn't matter. So, but you have to do a lot of things to engage merchants in a way that make them want to engage back. You have to do very little to make developers and system integrators and technology partners want to meaningfully engage and contribute. And
Yeah.
so maybe the association has to appeal to them first to get some traction and build a community, right? I'm not saying you don't appeal to merchants. They're important, but they're not self-selecting to be part of a broader group of people who are passionate about a subject.
Yeah. Well, and then I'm also curious about the analogy with Drupal. Like, I'm curious what the Drupal association looks like, and I don't know if they spoke to that, what they ended up landing on as far as their the primary people that they're serving, that the Drupal uh, association serves. Did they land on developers, or does Drupal have sort of a more fanatical user base?
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember in the conversation, they did specifically focus on the developer first,
Interesting.
um, in the way that they, the way that they did. Listen, I this is what's really awesome about the way that Magento is approaching this is that they're making us have these conversations because we've engaged, that company Smith Buckland has started out by saying you need to think very intently about who you're appealing to, right? And what is participation in the association mean? What do you get out of it? You
Yeah.
right? Like other than like a badge on the forums, like what does being a member of the association do for you? And what is expected out of a good performing member, a member in good standing out of the association?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm hopeful that Magento has included the right people in this conversation, and they're not hiding. It's not secret by any means. They're not hiding what's happening out of this. I think they're being very public with, like, and all the right people are involved. If you look at the people who stood on the stage at Imagine as the representatives of the Meet Magento Association, you had Ignacio Resco, right?
Hmm.
You had um, Thomas Goletz, you had Hilo Janssen, right?
Yep.
And who was the fourth?
Ooh.
Not
Oh,
Slava.
Kuba. Kuba?
Kuba. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. Kuba's Walensky. So
Kubes. Yeah.
when you look at the four of them, they represent the leadership of the Meet Magento Association to date, and
Yeah.
they are helping inform what's happening going forward. And if you look at that group of four people, they're not Americans, and they don't work for Magento.
Right.
So they have a worldwide perspective, a global perspective on what Magento means outside of our own US centric view. And I think that's super important. And they're going to advocate for that. So if you're a fan of the Meet Magento Association, you should feel good that Magento has included, like, they are core to this process.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing I'm curious about was whether was Mage Titans rip. Well, Brent was
yeah, Brent
involved.
puts on a Titans event. Brent puts on both a Titans and a Meet Magento event.
He's all
Um,
over it.
he's all in, baby.
All up in it.
So he puts on both of those events. Actually, two Titans events and a Meet Magento event. Um, so Brent's involved. But from a Titans leadership perspective, I'm not sure who else isn't. I know Rebecca Brockton was part of the conversation, I believe.
Mm,
Um, so we have a lot of
cool.
people who. The only reason I mention her is that she has. I guess I don't know. She has nothing to do with Titans. I'm thinking like of sort of people who have inroads into the sort of UK based agency and developer community, who
Yeah.
sort of have been advocating for some time. So maybe I'm conflating a couple different things. It's complicated. It is very complicated. This
A
whole
lot of
thing's
events.
complicated.
A lot of events. A lot of things.
But
Well,
if
that's
if the
cool.
Magento Association is only event based, I think we're all going to be very disappointed because Meet Magento Association has only been about events. I don't know that it's about and fostering local community development. I don't know that that has always fed back up into something larger,
Yeah.
and that needs to change. To go forward, that needs to change. And I've said in the past there are too many Magento events. There are just too many.
Hmm.
Um, it's really, really hard to program out the whole year where there's a Magento event happening somewhere in the world that's keeping you or conflicting with you being able to attend something else that's meaningful
Yeah.
in the ecosystem. And so hopefully having that organization and planning, having a direct line into Magento and having Magento have representation on the board of an association like that Maybe
Yeah.
that'll help fix that too.
Yeah, everybody's all complaining about the live streams, and it's the meetups, it's the events that are the things that are really constrained. Like you can't act there real time and things
Right.
like that. So hey, everybody
Yeah.
relax. By the way, Commerce Hero got a mention in the notes in the Smith Buckman notes as one of the resources. Just throwing that
Commerce
out
Hero,
there.
baby. I love the
Nomad got a
Commerce
mention.
Heroes.
Nomad got a mention. Um, so that was cool. But
Rest in peace, Nomad.
well,
Uh,
cool. What now? Rest in
Rest in
what
peace, Nomad. Um,
has we had some private DMs on the matter. I didn't know any of this was public,
it's
but
been publicly announced, I think, at this point. There's a lot of stuff that's happening we could not possibly fit in the 30-minute episode. We owe it to our community to do another episode at some point in the future. Are
we'll
you
do another
sure? Wait,
one
I'm
on
going to do
that.
to you what you always do to me. Are you sure you can't go beyond 6 o'clock,
I can
Galen? Are
go.
you sure?
I'm gonna go a tiny bit past. I'm gonna go a
Okay.
tiny bit past, which
All right.
I'm gonna be angry about after the fact, but I'll do it. I'll do it because there's some things we have to talk about.
What else? What else is there to
So
talk
the
about,
other
Kalen?
thing I
Poor
thought
Kalen, Kalen.
I thought was interesting to actually. So David Manners did a tweet storm on alcohol at events, which I thought would
Oh,
be something to be good for us to talk about. Before we talk about that, I want to insert a quick advertisement on the Commerce Hero front, which is that I would like to, if I could find somebody in the Austin area to help work with me on Commerce Hero, that would be awesome. So if you know anybody, hit me up. Is that okay that I just did that little
that's fine.
advertisement?
I don't. Yeah, that's great by
Um,
me.
so wanted to throw that in there. But so the topic, so yeah, David did this very vulnerable, transparent tweet thread where he talked about his own experience with alcohol and having kind of indulged a bit too much and how that played into some mental health issues, and that he tries not to drink now at events, and just some of the challenges around how alcohol is handled at events. It's something that is it's common for there to be a good amount of alcohol at tech events, and that's something that I think some people struggle with. And so it's interesting because you and I kind of flip flopped on this, because I would never, like, I'd have like a one drink maximum or whatever for quite a while, and then you didn't have such a maximum, and then we flip flopped. So anyways, so I mean, you have unique perspective on this as well, and so I'm
Yeah,
curious.
yeah. I definitely had a I don't know, definitely coinciding with the weight loss and health journey that I've been on for a little over a year and a half. Um, I sort of decided that alcohol is probably just not a good thing for me. Um, certainly tried not to overdo it in a way that would harm myself or anyone else. But, at some point you sort of just decide that there are things that are just not healthy for you. And, we've never really gone too deep into it. And I don't want to go deep into it when we can't go much deeper. I think that we should reserve it for another time. But I've just kind of decided that with my health goals and everything else, I'm just not going to drink anything. And so it's really been eye opening. And I feel for David in his blog, and very vulnerable sort of thing to admit is that, yeah, it actually can be really difficult to be someone who is sober at an event, whether you're sober for 30 days or for good or for whatever reason. There is definitely a lot of community activity that's planned around being around not around alcohol. And I think David's choice to sort of bring this topic to the Magento community is really important.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see more. I was called out early on as a meetup organizer for not having choices that are non-alcoholic. And so it was the second meetup we ever did in Florida 3 years ago. Somebody was like, other than water, do you have anything else to drink? And it was sort of eye-opening to me. So I've been really aware of it, but I think that it's a good and important conversation for us to have, especially if we're having conversations around mental health. There's a lot of people who, just for medicine conflicts and for whatever other reason, just cannot drink alcohol. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of these conversations, while we're having hard conversations, they kind of go hand in hand. And I applaud him for his
Yeah.
transparency there.
Yeah, I've seen some people ask like, should we have alcohol-free events? What can you do to have more variety of alcohol-free drinks at events? And I think that that's always cool. Like what I would do, and I've been on both sides. This is for many years. I would not, I'd have that. I'd either not drink at all, or I'd have like a one drink max, and yeah, I mean, I the amount of times that you get pressured to drink
Oh
is
yeah.
just unreal, and then you just have to kind of be firm on it, and so I've done that a lot, and then in the last couple of years I've kind of relaxed that a little bit, and so I don't know, I mean, it's definitely, I don't know what to say. It's just
Well,
it's
let's
it.
let's let. Sorry, I don't
No,
want
no,
to cut
no,
you
go
off.
ahead. No, 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 go
No,
ahead.
so my my sense is that there's man, my bandwidth is like killing me today.
It's brutal.
Uh, Wi-Fi is just not good for live streaming. I'm figuring this out.
Yeah.
Um, it's like a consistent issue every time I'm not hardline. Anyway, um, here's what I've tried to do is, instead of having events that are always in the evening, or having meetings that are always in the evening, that really you can't do anything else other than stand around in a crowd. uh, I've tried to plan things that are different. So if I know that this can be exclusionary in its own right, but doing a walk or a run early in the morning has allowed me to get out earlier in the day and do something that's different with people in our partner organizations. So, for instance, I've gone hiking with the folks from Vertex. We went out to around Magento's partner kickoff in January. We went out and we hiked a mountain.
Hmm.
We went to Runyon Canyon, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's a very different type of an activity, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's opportunities to try to incorporate those types of things that are, forget the big events. That why do we always pick on just the, like, the Imagines or Meet Magento events? Those are corporate events, that corporate meaning lots of people get together and stand in a room. And those are hard to have activities that, aren't just purely social, and people drink socially. That's fine. But I
Yeah.
think that if you were to incorporate other opportunities to meet that aren't, centric just to alcohol, um, in your day-to-day business dealings, then you might be better for it. You might find that you'll connect with other people who wouldn't otherwise, connect with you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think, or make, having other options available, meet over coffee, right? Meet over, tea. There's a bunch of ways to do it, but I think is if you're aware of it, uh, if you're aware of having an option and having a choice there, then you'll be more inclusive overall.
Yeah. And I think a good rule of thumb, I think I saw somebody mention, is just don't comment on if somebody isn't drinking, like don't there's no need to comment on it or pressure them. Like, hey, if you are and you're having a good time and other people are, that's great. If somebody says they don't want to or that they're not drinking, like, there's no need to comment on it or make a big deal out of it or pressure them. I think that's um a good rule of thumb just generally. And but
It's
yeah.
it's super weird though, like, especially if someone's made a decision to, like, change to change their approach in that regard. It is kind of tough to be on the other side of it, to say, like, like, somebody's now told you, like, I don't want to get a beer, when you know for a fact in the past that they've had no problem drinking. Don't I hate there to be a stigma there. I think, like, people should just take no for an answer and be okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it should be a touchy topic. I think, like, if someone tells you no, thank you, then you should just respect that. You should move on.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
there is
it's just
definitely,
it's
it's not
this
that there's a
very
stigma so much as a pressure, right?
yeah. It's this very strange thing where like there always has to be some intense pressure one way or another. It can't just be like, yeah, I'm gonna get imagine if like you were going out for lunch and you got like a Diet Coke versus a lemonade and they gave you like a super hard time, like, why'd you get the lemonade, man? You gotta go for the Diet Coke.
You
It's like
always
it's
drink the
just
Diet
it's the
Coke.
you last
What
time you
made
had
you change?
Diet
What
Coke.
made you change to lemonade? You always
You
drink
can't
Diet
just
Coke.
change your mind. So
Are
it
you
is this
sure? Oh, this Diet Coke is so good.
yeah. It's just this very
Let me tell
specific,
you about
you know.
the last 30 times that I had Diet Coke and how I will never not have Diet Coke and how it's part of my
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's just
yeah,
this area where there's just a lot of kind of weirdness. And if you are somebody that struggles with addiction along those lines, like that's got to be tough. That's got to be really, really tough. And I don't know what to do there. You got, I'm sure, set up boundaries for yourself and not go to certain events if it's going to be a temptation or things like that. Um,
yeah. I
so
mean,
it's,
I can certainly lend a little bit of a little bit to that conversation in that if that is something that you struggle with, then it might be good to be able to find there. I guarantee you 100%, and I know from experience that there are people just like you that are in this community that also struggle, and finding those people might be a good thing for you. And but it's going to take a little bit of vulnerability for you to sort of find who they are. And
I
I
mean,
think
and
maybe Mage Talk would be a really great resource for us to be able to connect those people, or Commerce Hero even, like providing an event that has sort of a mentality around, like, it doesn't have to say like this is a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that's happening, a secret meeting at Imagine, but you could probably put something together in some way, to allow those people to have a
yeah,
support system or go find
or
something else to do.
or maybe it's just something that's a specifically alcohol free event, which we say, hey, if you are into being alcohol free, come to this event, we'll hang out. And then not only is that a way to just hang out at that specific event, spend some time together, but then maybe that's also a way to connect with other people. Oh, this is also somebody that tries to stay away from alcohol, and then you can make some connections. Or maybe it's something you just make explicit, like people have health preference, food preferences, right? When you sign up at
Yep.
Imagine, if you want the vegetarian, whatever, maybe it's something that could just be explicit of like, I don't want to drink, I don't, and then people can, meet up with other, maybe there's out of 2, 3,000 attendees, maybe there's 500 people that feel that way, and then they can get to know each other and network and have alternate events. I know for myself, as somebody who doesn't drink at home, doesn't like go to events and drink like throughout, there's just not a whole lot of alcohol in my life. Like, Imagine is like if you were to chart like alcohol, just the amount of alcohol I'm around in general, it's just like zero, 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 huge spike at Imagine, and then
Around
zero.
Imagine, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and it doesn't necessarily, like, it's not necessarily logical. It's like I'm going there because it's a tech conference, but it just so happens that's just how it is. And so there's probably a lot of people for whom, it's just kind of like, I could do without that. Like I could just completely do without that component, in this event, experience. And then
Yeah,
there's others that it's
we
fun and they have a good
we probably
time
beat
and
this too much, right? Like we probably beat this a little too much too, to say that if it is like a dietary restriction, then just having options available instead of creating like a segregated community of people is
we need
probably
to
the right.
tattoo people on their
Sure.
foreheads with their no, yeah, we are beating this horse a little bit, but it's a horse that I think could use some beating. It is a big deal. I mean, we're talking about it in a lighthearted way, but it's a very big deal for people that are struggling with this. So
Yeah,
I think it's
and I would
worth.
say like if we were just giving good guidance on sort of the soft skills around around the how to deal socially in those situations for the people that don't know how to deal with it, then we're doing more than what we were doing before, which is not talking about it at all. And so I
Yeah,
appreciate David Manners sort of speaking up around that. Um, yeah, that's
yeah. And the
cool.
only other random thought I just had, and I don't know if this is a good idea, I'm just thinking out loud, is like if you had a specific reason, like if you had a very black and white reason, like if you were allergic or whatever, and you could give that reason, I'm pretty sure people would just immediately drop it. So I don't, it's probably not a good idea to lie about that if it's not true. But if you did, if you had like a reason prepared, because you're going to get asked, it's going to come up. If you had a very black and white uh, reason for not wanting to drink that you could give, and people would immediately understand it, there wouldn't be any joking or pressuring. Like that would probably be helpful. And there's
Yeah.
probably
All
different
right.
ways to
Yeah.
prepare that response. But
It reminds me, just to end on a funny sort of anecdote there. It reminds me of this conversation that I overheard at this. So one of the number one restaurants in the world is a restaurant in Chicago called Alinea, and I had the very good fortune to be able to go there last month or earlier this month at IRCE. And when I was sitting there, the waiter came over and did his spiel to another table, and we were well into our meal, and he starts off by saying, "Does anyone have any preference, any food preference, or do you have any dietary restrictions, or maybe a food allergy that I need to know about and I can let the chef know about?" And the lady speaks up and says, "Oh, I'm allergic to mayonnaise." Right?
okay.
And he says, "Oh, okay. Is it the oil or is it the egg that you're allergic to?" And she's like, "Oh no, I'm fine with oil and egg." And he's like, he sits for a second and she's like, "I'm just allergic to mayonnaise." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, we have aioli in a number of our dishes, and I can ask the chef to put that on the side so that you're not affected by it." She's like, "Oh, I'm fine with aioli. I have that all the time." And you quickly realize that I don't know that you're allergic so much as you just don't like it. Like
Yeah.
you don't like mayonnaise, or you could just say that and we would all be okay with it.
Yeah.
Um, anyway,
Yeah. Cool. Well, good stuff. Good stuff on that. So I think those are the kind of the two major topics. This is going to have to be a little bit of a short one today. But was there anything else? Anything else we wanted to touch
no,
on here before we?
no.
Hey,
Like and subscribe, yada yada
real
yada.
quickly, real quickly, congratulations on Brian Lang rejoining the
Oh
team.
yeah.
Holy cow.
Brian
That's
Lang
kind of
returning
wild.
from Amazon back to something digital.
You've
Welcome back,
literally got
Brian.
people that have left Amazon. That's a cool selling point too. Like, listen,
Yeah,
we've
former
got people that
Amazon.
have left.
We have someone
We've
former Amazon is now at something
yeah,
digital.
we've got
Uh,
Amazon talent that's flooding over to work with us. That's wild, dude. That's
It
very
is. He
very
he did a brief stint over there, and we'll probably unpack that in greater detail on a future episode of Future Commerce, which will be picking back up in full steam ahead in early August or late, sorry, probably early July. So look for a whole lot going on over there pretty soon.
watch that space. Okay.
I don't
All
know.
right,
My
man.
my bandwidth my bandwidth is killing me. I think it's time to just wrap it up.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in and joining along with us in the live chat. That was fun. And like and subscribe, upvote, all the things. Hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you later.
Peace out.